Spring training, that annual retreat that breaks the monotonous cycle of winter and brings back the game that baseball fans and players alike have been craving. When one thinks of it today, they usually picture players on a pristine field in the dry air of Arizona or the tropical climate of Florida. This, however, has not always been the case. Over a century ago, this tradition began right here in the spa city of Hot Springs, Arkansas. Baseball has become an integral part of the folklore of Hot Springs.
I grew up in a family that most of the family had grown up on Whittington Avenue and Park Avenue, which was where the baseball originated and played. And matter of fact, I lived with some grandparents who were on Whittington Avenue when it all started in 1886. So I heard these stories from a grandfather who, when I was young, was already in his 80s, back in the 1950s. So I heard the stories as a little boy, and my father continued the stories. My father witnessed a lot of it up on Whittington Avenue, the great ballpark that is behind what's now the Weyerhaeuser building up on Park Avenue. And Dad had told me many things about what went on up there.
The legends of spring training in the Spa City have also inspired other native Arkansans.
The Hot Springs Public Library had me come down and spend one Saturday where I was introducing my films and doing some Q&A. I took my grandson with me, and I said, Christian, come down with me, and you and I can hang together and go swim at the hotel pool, and let's go look at this baseball trail. And so we did, and we drove around and read the markers and stood there where Babe Ruth hit his monumental home run, and I thought, this is a film that I would like to do.
Larry Foley, who is head of the film department at the University of Arkansas, and an old friend of mine from back in his Channel 7 days, and I was the sports information director down at Henderson State. Larry has made some great documentaries, and he called and he said, I think I've got an idea. Why don't we do a documentary on the history of spring training in Hot Springs? And I said, well, I love it. Just how do we do it?
Steve Arison at the time, who's head of Visit Hot Springs, I'd read his name, and I made an appointment with Steve.
We met with Steve. He loved the idea. He called me back very quickly and said, why don't we create a historic Hot Springs baseball trail? He said, I think we can bring a lot of tourists to Hot Springs.
After the project got the green light, a group of experts was created to work on the trail.
We brought in some of these historians, including Bill Jenkinson out of Philadelphia, Tim Reed from San Diego, Mark Bloyer, a retired National Park curator, Don Duran from Hot Springs, originally a retired Baptist minister who resides in the Dallas area. We brought this group and others together. Those are the core that stayed together through the years as we've researched this.
With the team assembled, it was finally time to put the trail together.
We originally came up with 25 plaques that we could put up around town of historic events that happened in certain spots, or just historical people in what happened when they were in Hot Springs. It was very easy to do. It was tough to trim it down to 25, to be honest.
Mike Dugan remembers one experience in particular about putting up the trail.
Well, we put the trail up, and it had a hard time placing the signs around town, getting permission and stuff. One of my favorite stories is Hot Springs Country Club, where all of the players love to play golf every day. I went to Barry Howard, the wonderful manager of the club, and Barry said, Mike, I like the idea, but let's be careful where we put it. So we put it up by the driving range, which was the site of the original clubhouse at the country club. Barry called me back within 2 days, and he said, Mike, you didn't ask my permission to put it there. It may be blocking, and people don't like it, or this or that, or I don't like it. Well, about a week later, I went out. He said, I've had more compliments about that sign. It's one of the greatest things we ever did. I'm so happy we did it.
The trail educates through interactivity.
If you've noticed any of the plaques, anybody that's driven around Hot Springs, underneath the plaque there is a small white sign, a QR code, which I had to have explained to him. Being an older guy, I didn't understand, but if you'll hold your smartphone up in front of it, Phil Elson, the former voice of the Arkansas Travelers and now the current voice of Arkansas Razorback baseball and women's basketball, will tell you a lengthy story about what happened at that site and involving the people that are mentioned on the plaque.
Since its creation, the Hot Springs Historic Baseball Trail has attracted guests from all over the world.
Visit Hot Springs gets a tracking code for everybody that's used their phone at that site. And we're sitting here on a pretty cool day in the winter, but I'm telling you, we'll have over 600 hits on the winter months on those signs, and it'll usually involve 30 states, 5 or 6 foreign countries, and it doesn't take long through the year before it mushrooms up to all 50 states and dozens of countries all over the world. I've given tours to groups from all over. I've given tours to presidents of foreign countries, to members of Congress that want to know more about baseball in Hot Springs. So we know the word's out there. It's very important in the history of baseball.
Larry Foley's documentary, The First Boys of Spring, continued to have a strong connection to the Hot Springs Baseball Trail.
Some of the opening scenes are of the unveiling of that Stan Musial plaque, and so we were there. That's actually the first thing I shot in the film. And then very late in the film, we talk about the trail, and we tell people this is what you'll see when you come to Hot Springs today. So that's what I call bookending it. We bookended the film with the unveiling of a plaque, and then here's the historic trail. Frankly, the story would not have happened without the baseball trail.
Looking to the future, the trail has begun to schedule new special events.
We started scheduling what we call our baseball weekends a few years ago, and they have been a tremendous success. Last year, we had our baseball weekend in March, right around St. Patrick's Day, because that's the time for spring training. They all came to Hot Springs in March and left at the 1st of April to go back north to play baseball in the regular season. So it worked out well, and the night we had Al Roboski and Ferguson Jenkins at the convention center, we drew about 350 people and to listen to them. Then when the doors opened for autographs, a couple of hundred more people came in. We had a big event at Whittington Park, which drew people.
Over the years, the trail has continued to have a special impact on all of those involved.
I'm just the luckiest guy in the world because I've been the beneficiary of this.
I think for me personally, it was just a joyous project to work on. But what I would hope is that, those stories that we preserved, will live on.
We are the boys of baseball. We come to Hot Springs to play ball. We work, we play, and yes, we have some fun. We are the boys of baseball. I remember when the babe strolled in. He was mighty, he was sure and proud. He hit one with the smack, then it sailed across the track. Oh, they say he hit a gator in the mouth. And then there was old Dizzy Dean. As a pitcher, he was mighty keen.